the class.
It's the perfect day for fishing. You got a slight overcast, and you gotta get your tackle box packed and make sure you know where you're going. So generally, whenever I just get out there, I make sure I have everything, and then depending on if I'm on the boat or not, I just go along the shore and then I cast this out to see where the fish are. This is a spinner baits, and it usually catches everything from walleye to a pike. That's pretty much all I've caught with it so far. And then I usually put it on the steel leader, but when I first got these, I put it on the steel leader and then it slid down to the end, so I just tied a little paper clip around it to keep the steel leader from moving around. Other than that, if you just tie it up right on there, the pike come along from the side and snap your line. And then you got the crankbait, which rattles and it floats, but when you pull it, it goes underwater. And this, I usually catch everything from perch to pike and walleye. I even saw on a show where they were catching piranha with these, and they're expensive, but they work pretty good. They like to hook you a lot, so. And then I never usually use these because it's not very hard to difficult, but when I have to, when the pike or fish swallows, you just hook this in the mouth and it pries it open so you can reach in with long pliers and get it out. And then I also have a needle nose pliers my sister got me, and it's got a cutter to cut your line, and then a couple different ways of pressing it so you can press all your weights. And weights I usually use, I use this, which slides along your line. You can clip it on there easily, and then it takes it down. I've used this out river fishing or cat fishing, and then it takes it down to the bottom, and then if you use a small hook, the hook just floats, and it floats there and trails behind, and it sometimes gets into the fish mouth, hopefully. And then steel leaders, I usually don't like them get too long, so I usually get just a 6-inch or 12-inch steel leader. And then some guys like them about the length of half their pole, and I don't see why that is. And then if I'm out in the boat trolling, I like to use a spinner, which is just a hook on a thin piece of line that's hooked onto a bottom bouncer. And the bottom bouncer keeps it from hooking on the bottom, hopefully. And you can adjust the bottom bouncer however you want, so it's at a different depth. And this catches pike and walleye and perch. And you just put a worm or a leech on there, and they go after it. And you can get these as long as the pole is, and I don't know why people do that either, because they're kind of annoying. And I've got a little jig here that I like to use for perch, because some of the other perch, they don't like bigger hooks like these. They can't get their mouth on it very well, so they just steal your worm. And whenever I put the worm on, I just take my worm, and then the hook, just slide it down the worm, and pull it out, and slide it up to the base of the weights. And if I use a live worm, I just cut it in half so you don't lose as much, and then wrap it around the hook a whole bunch of times while putting it through the hook so it doesn't fall off. And a lot of these hooks are just mainly for pike. Like this, it's a Daredevil or a spoon, and it's just got a solid hook that sits on the back and it spins through the water. Usually they just catch pike, but sometimes you can actually catch perch with them, and it's kind of crazy. And then you got type of jig, but it's got like a fish head on it. And it's kind of it's also got a grub on it. You can put everything from a grub to a worm or a minnow. And this would attract walleye and pike and perch pretty well. I use this if I don't have a spinnerbait handy. And then there's pretty much for jig that's got a feather tied around it. And perch really like it if they're small enough, because you just sit through and the feather bobs up and it looks like a tail. And then I forget the names of these hooks, but they're pretty good for catching walleye. And I just got a long worm on it with should be a tail. And I pick whatever worm I want, or plastic worm for whatever hook I want, or type of hook. These worms would go on about a jig this size, and this size worm would go on about a hook about small for perch. And these I mainly just put on these bigger hooks. And a lot of hooks I use for casting, and then they're weighted, so they drop about a foot per second. So you can just count out and you can know how deep you're going. And then I've kind of looked online. This is called a drop shot rig. It's got a hook or a weight on the bottom and then a hook in the middle, if it's not all tied up. And then I just got a spinner on it. Usually you don't use a spinner, but or a flash. And then a couple weights to keep the hook. And this I've really caught perch with during ice fishing. These are really good for ice fishing. You just pop them down your hole and jig them. And then you don't need to set your depth or anything. You can just feel when this weight hits the ground, and then you just jig between this. And then I got a rattling jig, or a weight, so the rattle brings them in. And it's a very good idea to have your tackle packed up and ready to go, because if you're missing something that you need, it's kind of important to have. Like sometimes I forgot pliers and then had fish where it's all the way in the back of the mouth, and I just had to cut the line and let the fish go with the hook. With a lot of hooks you don't want to let go. So